Okay, I'm going to show you how to make a tiny, tiny rose. I'm not going to be doing the base. This video is just for the rose right now. I can do the base in another video if anyone's interested. Okay, quick rundown of some of the things you can use. These are my two colors. You can do whatever color you like. It's your rose. I chose red because it shows up nicely. It's very classic. Some paintbrushes, some dotting tools or sculpting tools. The ribbon blade's always helpful. And florist wire. You can use any thin wire you want. I like this because it's very flexible and it's already green. So, you know, one less step of trying to figure out how to make brown wire green. Okay, so the first step you need to do is you get a piece of wire and then you want to loop at the end. Then you take your red clay, whatever it is, make, you know, a little kind of teardrop shape and stuff it over the loop. You want to kind of get it pretty good and sealed on there. And you want the tip pointed pretty thoroughly. It doesn't have to be super, super tight, but decently tight. And then you bake it. This is for a pretty big rose. Smaller if you want it smaller, however you like. So I already baked this one. That's exactly what it looks like, nothing special. To help with the adhesiveness, because once it's baked, it doesn't really stick on super well. Rock light, that is, so I'm going to put a thin layer on to try to help with the petals. Mostly at the base, because roses are much thicker at the base than at the top. Okay, so I have a whole bunch of differently sized future petals. I had them more or less arranged to size. You don't have to, but it helps. So, very small one. Roll it into, it doesn't have to be pointy or a different shape. You can do round. I prefer doing slightly pointed. It helps with the shape. Okay. Oh, by the way, this is craft foam. They do actually sell little pre-cut ones with backing and stuff. I think at Michael's or Joann's. It's a couple of dollars. This is just regular old craft foam. This sheet's 90 cents. You can do either. So now I am. This part's a little tricky. Especially, I don't recommend making your clay super tacky because it can make it difficult to work with. It gets stuck to stuff a lot. Okay. The shape of an actual petal isn't really round. It's more of a square almost with rounded edges. Well, it depends on the rose. But don't make it perfectly round. It'll look fake. And the fun thing about using this foam stuff is it gives it a texture. You can hide the texture or you can use it depending on how you like doing it, which way you face the rose, or the rose petal. I usually face the velvety part out because if you look at actual rose petals, they're not so much shiny as they have a nice high velvet appearance. So roses open up out. So I'm going to do a few wrapping around the center. So I'm putting the velvet side down. Or out, I guess. But it'll make more sense as I do more. Okay, so you want the petals, especially the small, to really overlap and try to keep the way they unwrap consistent. That's more natural. Sorry. So there we go. So anyway, as you can see, they're mostly folded around, and if you want to get them a little more slick, push down. I try to do different layers, and if you really want to try to get some, actually I'll show it in the next level, because this one's going to be a pretty big rose, and at this point I don't think the petals would be open much. All right. So we've already got the established inner layer, but now we want to start having more of what we consider a normal rose pattern. So I took the velvety part and I'm now facing it in towards the center, but when we actually start opening up the rose, it will be displayed outwardly. So we're already getting a nice rose pattern, but I'm going to make it a big fluffy rose. So we're going to have these, it's kind of more of an inner layer still, so I'm pushing them together to move it a little higher so it's still not as open. Always try to go for an even number. You can get away with they're odd numbers. Always try to go for an odd number, it looks better for nature. Even looks artificial, odd looks natural. And if you want to shape the petals, I usually recommend just giving them a little squeeze. Pull down and squeeze too. See, I'm making a little peak, but I'm pulling down and then pushing back up. And it gives much better shape. It's not bad. You can also use your little pointing tool to really push them in and alter the shape. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to talk more about actually making the petals. The little ones on the inner side were really tiny, so it was kind of hard for me to show. So I didn't want to go too in depth, but now they're getting a little bigger, so it'll be easy for me to talk about. So, like I said, I try to give it a little bit of a point at one end, because that'll push more clay to the front and give you a nice little tail to work with. I just gently roll. I do not push. Don't push. You'll push it into the clay and it'll either get stuck in or push it into the foam and it'll either get stuck on the foam or your tool. Instead, just gently push and roll. Don't slam it, just mostly use the pressure of rolling it out very gently. And that's how you get the really fine edge, is you just roll it all the way to the end. You can also change the shape of the petal if you want. If you want a more pointed look or more rounded, based on how you want it to come out. And as you can see, there's like a little tail almost of extra clay down there. And that's good, because it works as a handle. Because if it was as thin uniformly as it is down here, it would just fall to pieces. I've tried. Oh, so Now we're seeing more of a pattern. Oh, when you start your first one, and you should always try to place it in between the preceding level. It'll really help the illusion. It'll look much more natural. But you can see how dull the round shape is compared to how interesting those ones are. So here's the side. You can kind of see what I'm doing, squishing it all in, building up the layers. When I'm restarting a new circle, I always try to pick the smallest first and work my way out. Doesn't always work, but that's the idea. I might also have to start doing 7 as opposed to 5. It's starting to get pretty big. We squish them in. Squish, squish. The other nice thing about squishing it is it pushes them up and out. Which is probably not as realistic on the anatomy side, but it gives you a really nice top-down view. There you go. You can actually do this without baking the center hard part if you don't want to. I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't have. It's a lot harder to do it without a nice solid core. It slips all over. But it gives the rose a little more of a shorter profile, because I do want to add the little calyx part, but the first part needs to be fired. This with a satin if you don't want them actually, or not satin, pastels if you don't want it to be shiny, but I always do these for jewelry, and so my philosophy is if it's jewelry it should shine. Oh, shoot. Sorry. You do not want to press down hard. You will squish your pretty little petals that you just spent all that work in. Touch of gold. I would recommend more of a square brush for this. It tends to work a little better. Well, at least the initial part. You don't have to, obviously. And I'm just trying to do the very tips to give them a little more definition. Alright, I'm gonna go bake it. we're back. So I'm gonna put a little bit of green. Get that up under there. Since this is a pretty open rose, it wouldn't be that high in a, but if you're doing a more closed off one, the green part, the calyx, would be a lot higher. Right now I'm just kind of stuffing this on, give it, I don't think it needs to that much. Again, this is usually done in 5s. But look at a real rose if you want a better reference, which I should have done next time. Okay, whatever. So, skinny. Take the fat end. I'm gonna roll it out a little bit. Get that way. And they usually have a raggedy kind of edge, so I'm pulling it out. Don't worry if it's not pointy. We're gonna fix that. So, raggedy. And then you take it and just kind of pull it into a tube. And then we're gonna roll it in. So there's a little fat end on all of them, don't worry about that. It's a nice little handle for manipulating it. If it's a little bigger. So if you want it smaller, just do it smaller. Yeah, it's a little more obvious than I do on most roses. But they look nice. And you can either cut that off, this excess, or you can try to move it down the wire. The only problem is once you bake it, you can't bend the wire again. This is an older version. You can see it's much smaller on that. It's not bad. So, there is my rose. I'll show you a previous one compared it to. And each clay has its own working capabilities. Some of the roses, if you really want to mess around with the different colors and the different clay types, it does alter how the rose comes out. But I think you get an idea. Thank you very much. Like and subscribe if you liked it. And if not, upvote me. Thanks.